Welcome to The Right Stuff from Goldspot Pens, a podcast that guides you from pen noob to aficionado in less than 20 minutes. I'm your host, Tom Otto. In this episode, I answer hashtag 8 pen questions about my fountain pen collecting journey, and I share my thoughts on kids using fountain pens. And hang out to the end, and I'll give away something on my desk. In this episode, I'm hopping on the fountain pen and ink train started by Simone and Leanne Likes by answering hashtag 8 pen questions. Unlike the top 5 pen videos, my answers to these questions are based solely on my preferences and reflect my journey thus far into the wonderful world of fine writing. Quite a few YouTube channels are participating, and you can find all the video responses, and there's quite a few of them, using the playlist link that I left in the description below. I'll also include a list of all the questions in the description if you'd like to answer them yourself, so feel free to leave a comment with your answers as well. So before I get to the first question, I might sound a little different to you guys. My voice is kind of coming and going with the allergies and the seasons changing and stuff, so I apologize for that. Don't normally sound this nasally. But the first pen question is, when and how did your fountain pen journey begin? So, officially, I started working at Goldspot Pens over 15 years ago. It led me to this wonderful world of fountain pens that I just first had a beautiful experience with, and then had just continued to stumble down the rabbit hole since then. So I worked on the first issue of the Goldspot print catalog back in 2007, and it just led me to appreciate and understand all the various brands, all the pens that were in there. At that time, I think, too, Goldspot was selling a lot of ballpoints, a lot of pens for either your graduation, promotions, like corporate gifts and things like that. And wasn't too much into fountain pens, but then I started to understand, like, oh, well, there's a whole bunch of different nib sizes, that fountain pens had a wide variety of different inks, and I was intrigued, so I started to get into it. But, you know, unofficially, though, I would say it actually started a lot longer ago than that. My fountain pen journey, I think, started like unofficially back when I was probably like an adolescent, doing like comic books and stuff. As I was drawing, I drew a lot. I liked being artistic. And one of the things I would use in comic book drawing was a dip nib that had a flexible tip to be able then to provide emphasis on inking. There's a video that we did, an interview with Chris Lee, who's a Marvel comic book artist, where we talk about that a little bit if you want to check that out on our channel. And I did go a little bit into my history with that, but I was first introduced to the idea of pen and ink back then. And I was also a very big fanatic of going back to school shopping, and I loved going through the office supply store and picking out a pen that felt more ergonomic and more comfortable for me to write with, so I didn't just pick anything. I had a callus on my middle finger when I was really young, and I was learning how to write with a pencil, and it was hurting me because I would just grip it so much. So I bought a Dr. Grip. That was kind of like my first nice pen that I would use during school, just so that it would help my callus that was irritating me as I was writing. That I would probably say is kind of like the initial beginnings of it, but like definitely full blown by 15 years ago when I started working for Goldspot. Question number 2, favorite inks in the beginning. What are your go-to inks now? So in the beginning, and this is what I'm saying, like 15 years ago, really wasn't as many options as there are now. I mean, I dabbled a little bit here and there with, at that time, Goldspot carried Private Reserve, Noodler's Ink, Pelikan had a decent collection, also Waterman too had maybe like 7, 8 different inks. But it wasn't really until I got into Sailor that it truly hit me about how beautiful inks could be. Because like Sailor at the time, they had the Gentle ink collection. They started to expand outwards with like the Astoria pigmented inks and things. But really what hit for me was seeing Sailor Satin, which is still one of my favorites because it just latched on so early in my pen journey, because it has such a beautiful, rich blue color. and has that reddish pinkish sheen about it. And it's just enough sheen. It's not an overwhelming amount of sheen. So Sailor Satin is one of my favorites still. I also have a bottle of Blue Black Sailor ink and Grenade that I still haven't finished from a long time ago. Come 15 years forward, now currently I basically try everything and anything I can get my hands on from all around the world. So that includes like South Korea's Wearing Yule and Colorverse, Australia, Robert Oster, Troublemaker, KWZ, Tasha, and like so many different inks that I just keep samples of. So you can find my top 5 favorite inks of all time using the link in the description below. It's a blog post article on Goldspot, and really these inks have been phenomenal for me to use. I actually have bottles of them at home, despite my collection, huge collection, growing collection of samples. So question number 3. How have your ink and pen tastes changed over time? So, I was really nervous about how much ink I was going to be putting on the page. I was used to drawing or writing with like gel pens or ballpoint pens. So fountain pen ink, I knew from my experience making art and comics and stuff, is that it's very watery and can crinkle up all of the paper, especially like a cheaper paper that I'm used to using in the types of notebooks that I had. So I started with an extra fine, and this is the pen that I had started with, was the Lamy Safari in the blue, and you could tell that this is old because it still has the black clip. The more current versions have a silver clip. So this is still a pen I will ink up every now and then, and it has an extra fine nib. So that's why I had started with, because I was a little nervous about how much ink it was going to be on my page and whether the feathering and the bleed through were going to be an issue. So then maybe like a year or two afterwards, after first being acquainted with the Lamy Safari, I had bought a Joy, a 1.5 millimeter calligraphy nib, because I was doing invitations for my wedding. So I was actually writing the invitations by hand on the envelopes. I wanted to do that to kind of get that nice calligraphic flair and make it look fancy without paying the calligrapher, because it was kind of on a budget. So, and then that was kind of like my first experience with a variable line width to add that bit of flair. And then what I noticed is that I wanted to see more of the ink color on the page. So I wasn't really satisfied with the extra fine and fines, being that they didn't put as much color on the page. I was really enjoying the fact of seeing like a broad swatch of color, even though the 1.9 is a little bit big. But I wanted to see more character, more color, more line variation. So my taste then developed into broader nibs, and then of course like flex nibs. So like going from like an extra fine to opening up my pen case here, I have a Pelican that's a medium point nowadays, and that's basically like a broad because Pelicans write a bit broader. Then I have a couple of Mont Blancs, a 146 that is Bokumundo decorated, and then just a regular 149, but both of them have got pretty chunky broad nibs on them. Then I have a couple of the flex nib options, an 823 with an FA nib, the Leonardo that I have, a Momento Zero Grande 2.0, has got Ralph Reyes's cross flex nib. Then one of my favorites of the bunch, the Leonardo Momento Zero with the Mediterranean celluloid, has got a 1.3 millimeter Bach stub nib on it, and it just writes beautifully. I love the character of that nib. So there's just a definitely not a shy ink characteristic about these pens. Like, they're not stingy on ink at all. They have a very rich flow. So now I know at this point that I can use the broader flex nibs, stub nibs, but I had to upgrade my paper quality. So for that, I have to have all journals and notepads that are fountain pen friendly, of which I use Rhodia pads and an endless recorder that handle pretty much anything that I could throw at it. Question number 4, are there any inks and pens that you have yet to try but would like to? So out of all of this, I mean, I have a beautiful collection. I love it. I'm very satisfied with what I have, where I stand right now with everything. I have tons of inks, beautiful pens I enjoy writing with. There are some things that I am curious about, one of which is Conid pens. I want to see what the fuss is about. I've asked people about this before too, and they just kind of like, there's just something about Conid that just gets people all crazy. So I want to see what the fuss is about eventually, and just see what, just test it out. Not necessarily buy one. I want to see what it's like. Ink-wise, of course, as many inks as I've tried and sampled and wrote with, there's always going to be colors and brands that I haven't had experience with because they just keep popping up all the time. So 3 of them I could think of: Ink Institute, Kakimori Inks, and Lenin Toolbar. Question number 5, what is your Holy Grail pen? So my Holy Grail pen I had gotten already, and that is the Leonardo Momento Zero in the Mediterranean celluloid. So one of the main reasons why Goldspot sells Leonardo is that I selfishly wanted to buy the Momento Zero Mediterranean celluloid with my employee discount. So I saw this pen, I saw pictures of it on Instagram. I knew I had to have it back in 2018, I think it was. So celluloid is absolutely gorgeous. It's a rare material, but it just has a depth and luster that is unlike any other acrylic that I still have yet to see. And I had experience before with a celluloid pen. Eric from, you see him on Anderson Pens, or he used to be with FP Geeks, but at the time he was with FP Geeks. But Eric had sent me a Delta celluloid pen. It was a Chatterley exclusive. He sent it to me to just borrow, like on loan, like it was a pen library. So I had it for a while and I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with like the feel, because celluloid also just feels differently than acrylic. That camphor smell, especially you sniff it in the cap, it's just a different smell to the material as well. But just the beauty of it, the chatoyance and luster, like I said, it just, and that color, that turquoise color just reminds me of beautiful, clear waters, and just like the peace and serenity that comes with it. Grail pen achieved, and there's no, I feel like there are other pens I'm interested in, but like I don't feel like this one just tops it and can't be beat by anything else. Question number 6, how many pens do you currently own? So I brought everything here on the table with me. And you might be surprised by that because it's like, oh, well, you work for a pen company, so why don't you have a lot more pens? I imagine that you must have thousands or whatever. You must have a huge collection of pens, but I limit myself. So I have my top 10, which is like my top 10 best pens that I own. These are the most precious pens to me. I will usually have maybe like 3 or 4 of them inked at one time to carry with me. I bring it to work and I use them regularly. So I try to cycle them out, but this is my bull pen, as you might use a sports reference for baseball. Then you have like a little bit more of a daily use type of thing. So this is what I call my pen cup pens, of which I would consider my Safaris as grouped with this. So these are pens that I would just kind of consider just something I would use regularly. Like I don't mind throwing shimmer inks in my Lamy Safaris or my Kaweco Sports, and then I'll have a few other pens that are here. Like I have a ballpoint. This Parker Sonnet has a little bit more of a sentimental value because this was given to me as a graduation gift by my then girlfriend, now wife. So it was before working at Goldspot, so that kind of gives you a little foreshadowing into what was going to happen then. But like this Opus 88 has got a fun little Pilot Parallel modification that I did with it, that I ground the nib into what I called the Naifu nib. So that I ground a few of these and actually sold them at one point too. They're fun. They kind of create like a ragged edge sort of calligraphy, graffiti style sort of thing. So this is just fun stuff that I would just have to, if I want to be like artsy or use shimmer inks or test inks without throwing them in the more precious pens. Oh, and just by the way, this is a Nakabayashi pen stand. It's made out of paperboard and stuff, and we don't sell it on Goldspot yet. But if you're interested, drop a comment below if you'd be interested in like Goldspot carrying that. This particular pen case right here is a point of view pen case from Levenger I bought way back in the day, and it serves as the limitation, and that will bring me to the 7th question. It serves as a limitation of how many of the nicest pens that I could possibly own. So question number 7 is, do you have a limit on pens or inks in your collection? Is it a number? Is it a feeling? When do you know that you have reached your maximum? So when I bought the 10 pen case from Levenger, way back when. I didn't realize I was going to put a ceiling limit on my pen collection, but this kind of served as a nice reminder that, hey, you have all of these pens. You could look at them through the top of the glass so you could see what you own. There's no one that's going unused or unloved. So that's why I keep it at just a hard limit of 10. It ensures I can't get in big trouble with the high price limited editions. So if I wanted to have something like, let's say, the Pelikan 800 Blue, which became available last year when they had found the material, they made these pens, and this pen was back from, I think, 2010. So I missed out on it before. I wanted to buy it now because I can be able to afford buying something like this. So I did. But in order to do that, I had to get rid of something else. So I had to go one in, one out. And that's how it works with this. So if something else comes along, something's got to be on the chopping block. Okay, then also obviously the pen cup only holds so many pens, so I will try to keep my daily kind of knock around pens at that level too. So if something comes along, like a beautiful new Kaweco Sport design that I really like, then I will have to give away or do something with one of the other pens there so to take its place. When it comes to inks though, there's no limit for me. Because I don't buy bottles, I don't buy full bottles mostly, I get samples. So I have a sample collection, I have them in boxes, and they don't take up a lot of space. So for me, they don't really need a limit so much as pens do, because pens you could get in trouble with how expensive they are, how much space they're going to be taking up, because I would have to get more storage for them. But when it comes to inks, I want to sample as many as possible, so I'll buy little samples of them, and I'll try to kick off some of the samples I've had for a while. So if, let's say, I filled up one of my pens, and I notice that, I have just a little bit of ink left, I'll just polish the rest of it off. I'll fill up the rest of the pen, and then use that ink, and then recycle the sample. So that way the samples end up going down at some point, definitely not quick as I accumulate them for sure, but that there's at least some in and out when it comes to the ink collection as well. So at number 8, we have the last final question, which is consequently, what would you do if another pen/ink came along? While not being as bad as watches, collecting fountain pens can be an expensive hobby. To ensure that I don't spend my entire paycheck on pens, I keep the 10 pen rule for my nicest pens. If another one comes along, like I said, it has to beat one of these pens. It has to beat Sentimentality, has to beat the vintage Parker Vacuumatic, who's replacing this pen? It really has to be better than, in at least my view, about any of these pens that are here. So if it does, then one of these pens is on the chopping block. Sell it, give it away, make room for the new acquisition. And for inks, like I said, there's no limit. So I'll just keep using them as much as I like to. I try to do other things to help go through the ink collection a little bit, like participating in a handwriting challenge like 30 Inks, 30 Days allows me to revisit a lot of the colors that I had purchased recently, or doing other handwriting challenges that are on social media, doing writing prompts. I post a couple of videos about doing some more writing and some tips on what you could do to use your pens and inks a little bit more often, so you could check those out as well. But that's this kind of stuff that I would do to try to get everything, use everything that I have, use it, and enjoy it. So I know we just answered the 8 pen questions, but there's one question left to answer, which is the question of the week, which comes from Alonzo Tehran 3264, who writes, what would be your go-to pen for a kid that has a safe age to use a fountain pen, and how would you encourage his love for writing instruments to keep him close to books and handwriting and a bit away from the screens? As someone who's been in the pen industry for 15 years and has 2 school-age kids, you would think that I would have a great answer for this. I really don't. Despite my writing with pens and constantly using it at home, shooting videos with them, taking them to pen shows, they really haven't caught the fountain pen bug. But yet, both my kids have pens that I've given to them at some point or another. Every once in a while, they'll ask me to clean and ink a pen, only for that pen to return back to whatever dark domain it was hiding in beforehand. But I'm not going to force them. I'll wait. I'll be patient. I don't expect them, or anyone else for that matter, to enjoy writing with a fountain pen as much as I do. There are a couple truths that I know deep in my bones. Writing, drawing, and painting by hand will never be replaced entirely by machines. And two, the fountain pen is one of the most purest, most enjoyable ways I create. So I'll be here, patiently waiting for everyone to come around to their senses. But back to your question, Alonzo, because fountain pens can potentially cause an inky mess if they are dropped on the floor, mixed in with the laundry, or used to write with on walls, an appropriate age to use a fountain pen could be around 8 to 10 years old. At that point, they should already have the ability to write using a pencil and might be responsible enough to keep a fountain pen. Ultimately, though, you'll have to be the judge, as you know the child better than I do. For starter pens, I recommend the Lamy Safari, as it has a molded front grip section to help show beginners how to hold a fountain pen. It's made of ABS plastic, which is the same tough material used in Lego bricks. It's also priced reasonably, on sale for under $30 here in the USA. So it wouldn't be as devastating to lose a pen as it would be to lose a phone or a tablet. And as for keeping them close to analog and away from digital, that all depends on the environment. Set the example yourself. Show them that you value offline activities more than checking out on your devices. Pick up a notebook instead of a laptop. The attitude is contagious. One of the things I tried recently with my kids that I saw some success with is setting what we call a golden hour. So a golden hour is basically 1 hour, set a timer, no phones, games, or screens, but it depends, like watching TV or a movie together, I guess that would be okay. Like, it depends on what you want to set. But it really produces a nice family bonding moment and some relaxing downtime without the distractions of notifications and the feeling that you need to pick up your phone and check something. So you could also let's say just eat dinner, have an uninterrupted discussion, and play board games. It's just a fun, free flowing creative outlet that you could just do whatever you'd like to do during that golden hour. And it's a fun way to just unplug and reconnect with people around you. Congrats go to Alonzo Terran, 3264, for being picked as the question of the week. You've won the Retro 51 Alice in Wonderland I mentioned in last week's episode. Pen or pencil, your choice. Email me at tom@goldspot.com to claim your prize. For this week's giveaway, I know I said give away something on my desk, but I'm not giving away my personal pens. This is an Opus 88 Mini Baby Beluga fountain pen that's actually another new prototype from Opus. You might think it's the same exact thing, but actually it's just slightly different. They re-engineered the inner cap lining so that it doesn't snap fit on the blind cap. It more or less posts on the barrel. So they want to try this out because they said that people's feedback about the caps posting and click posting on top of that they could turn the cap. They want to make it so that it would post a little bit more securely, but post on the barrel. So long story short, this is the giveaway item for this week's giveaway. So to enter, you must be subscribed to the Goldspot Pens channel, like this video, and leave a comment with a question you'd like for me to answer in a future episode. If I answer your question of the week, and you win. Now, I know this is my personal pen collection, but I have written with quite a few of these pens, and you might see them featured on the Goldspot Pens YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikToks, so you could see what the writing samples look like for each of these pens. I know that not every one of them, definitely not the Mont Blancs or the Vintage Parker, are not going to be available on Goldspot, but there's a chance that something like a Leonardo similar will be available on the website. So thank you for checking out this week's episode of the Write Stuff podcast by Goldspot Pens. Now go out there, put your pen to paper, and write stuff. Stay inky, my friends. Take care.